Hi there. I just wanted to pop on today and talk a little bit about abundance. This is something that has been a lifelong exploration for me. Um, I've been exploring my human design recently, and I learned that my conscious sun is the spirit of abundance. And I already knew from, just my explorations previous to this that my second house of abundance in astrology, of money abundance specifically, was in my North Node. My North Node was in this house, and my North Node is also Taurus. And I've always had this sense that I was meant for something greater, that I was meant to have a financial abundance, and I always felt kind of called to a financial abundance specifically that my family had never experienced. Growing up, it was bouncing around different places, living different places, not having hardly enough food on the table, and barely getting by paycheck to paycheck with my parents, and yeah, bankruptcies and yeah, it's always been and it's always been the same for me, barely getting by paycheck to paycheck. And I've also never been someone who was driven by money. I mean, when I was 20 years old, I had already had close to 20 jobs because I was looking for something that was fun. I didn't care how much I was making. It didn't matter to me how much I was making. And eventually, the jobs that I settled into for any length of time were, for multiple years at a time, were jobs where I was able to use my gifts, my natural gift in numbers. And so, I worked for a few different places where I worked with attorneys with the Internal Revenue Service, and it was a very deeply financially based job where um, we basically worked with people who owed money to the IRS, and then we would examine their financial situation to determine what kind of payment arrangement they could come up with or to try to get a discount on how much they were owing, things like that. And so, and from that job, I actually moved into being the executive assistant for the CFO at Goodwill Industries. And I had when I was in college, I had taken a couple of classes, one for business, and it didn't take long in that class for me to stop going. So I was like, you're not teaching me anything I don't already know. I had grown up around people building businesses. It was something that came very naturally to me as far as what, the mainstream idea of it was. And then I took some accounting classes and I was just like, I don't know, all this comes pretty easily to me. And I don't care to be a CPA. I actually don't want to do people's taxes. So I actually instead went and got a bookkeeper's certification. And the first job after my divorce, the first business that I started to build was actually around my bookkeeping. And it was specifically focused on helping other business owners who generally are not good with numbers, who hire bookkeepers. And then these bookkeepers, because they're the ones doing the numbers, they're the ones feeding things into the profit and loss statements and into these reports. A lot of times business owners don't even have any idea where their money is going, and it's a really easy way that they can be taken advantage of. And so my goal was to just teach them the basics so that they couldn't be taken advantage of and wouldn't be leaking money anymore. And it's so funny because as I explored my sort of healing journey, so I mean, for what it's worth, for any of you that kind of, follow any of these things or give any of these things credence, I am a Pisces sun and rising with an Aquarian moon. And my, my coping mechanisms from childhood, the ways that I got through the emotional trauma that I had experienced was to just totally dissociate, like a lot of people do. But I rationalized everything. So I understood. I would come up with a way, a perspective of these situations that I could understand that would help me to move through, where I didn't become the victim and I was able to move on with my life um, without having to really face the emotional aspects of it. And as I started to go inward and kind of dig these roots in, my natural chart is very, I'm like a third water, a third air, and a third fire. And I don't have any earth in my chart. And so as I started to dig my roots in, as I started to really start to access those emotional layers, especially over the past couple of years, which was about 3 years into my healing journey, it's almost like I ran away from the air aspects and from the light aspects. And what happened was anything that I perceived as intellectual or logical, I just wanted to get some space from. I really wanted to dig into the intuition, to the sensation, to the roots. And as I came back out of that just in the past year, it's been a process of rebirthing that masculine intellectual space to really claim the gifts in this Aquarian nature and this logic and this rationale, this problem solving. And, I have such a beautiful relationship now with my inner masculine. And especially now that I've been exploring the money pieces of it. So over the past year, I mean, the money and abundance aspect, as I said, it's always been a big part for me because it's my conscious sun and human design. Of course, it's been a huge lifelong work for me. And I always sensed as I've, explored the money layer with many mentors, many, money magic magicians, there's all these tips and tricks and they never worked for me. I would go out and I would buy the Louboutins, or I would go and buy my Coach bag, and I would walk around with them, or I would have my Lexus vehicle, and yeah, it felt great, but that never brought more abundance. It didn't work that way for me. And, I would have all the crystals and do all the things and carry the cash on me. And, these tricks are meant to make you feel the sensation of abundance internally so that you can attract more of it, right? But as I've unraveled these threads, I've realized that one of the mentors that I was working with early on in my journey used to always talk about, actually, a couple of my mentors early on in my journey would talk about not allowing the number to feel big, normalize it. And to me, normalizing it meant just don't feel anything about it. Just don't have any connection to it, which meant I wasn't looking at money at all. I would just ignore it. And then I would bring all these things in that would make me feel abundant and, put this trust out to the universe that, well, if I'm doing what makes me feel abundant, you're going to replace it for me. And that's just not what happened. So I was just leaking money everywhere. And, continued doing the inner work and continued moving towards sources that resonated with me for these sort of explorations in abundance. And I have always been able to feel into where I have wisdom to share as far as abundance, or, food I can share as abundance, and my light and my joy and, these things. But when it came to money, it was like, well, I don't have enough and I don't have any to give anybody. And It's so funny because early on in my healing, inner journey process, and I actually have a few recordings on my YouTube channel from this still. My entire my entire point of doing any videos on YouTube or my podcast was always to record my journey through its evolution. And so you can see some videos from me working with Christina through these layers. I think we probably recorded some of them working through some of the abundance layers. Near the time, it was November of 2017, I believe it was, that I was looking at eviction. And we processed some layers around it. But one of the things that she had told me was that she could see me at some point becoming a coach around money and sexual traumas and intimacy. And I was just like, yeah, right. And so imagine my surprise as I move through, my entire journey has been around intimacy, sacred union. I've recognized these gifts, and that's why my entire, you know, the work that I do, all of my gifts is focused around sacred union and intimacy and healing the kind of separation and trauma, wounding, emotional trauma that we experience between the masculine and feminine, and on both sides, because I've had a deep, deep journey with that myself. And it's like I've been really focused on the abundance layers in the past year, particularly the past 6 months or so. And I mean, it's always been there. I've always been dancing with them. I've always been processing them, but it's been in earnest recently. Namely since we moved into the Taurus North Node as a collective. So things have been really intense for me the past year, moving through a lot of layers. And I was recently going through my human design chart, and this is something that I've been doing just on the side, and I'm thinking about actually offering it as a separate service, as an icebreaker service, because working with others too and being able to connect them into their natural gifts that are here as their divine purpose, it's like we just never see these natural aspects of ourselves as a divine gift. And we don't think that that could possibly be our purpose. But the way that human design breaks it down is really fascinating to me. The way that I can see these connections and weave how we personally are designed to experience prosperity. It's different for each person. And that's why some of these tricks and stuff, they just didn't work for me, because my prosperity is experienced through stepping into my north node and claiming my gifts and walking through life as my natural, as my purest soul expression, right? Sharing my gifts, connecting with community. And so as I've been exploring, I'm looking through, and it's like I also connected to my business and the energetics of my business. And my business completes my money lines for me. My business's conscious sun is the prosperity seeker. I mean, it's become very, very clear to me that I am here to be a philanthropist and to experience wealth through this spiritual endeavor. And it's been interesting because, when we look around the spiritual um, space, we see a lot of people who will actually move away from money. And sometimes it's actually a little bit ostracized, but in general, you see people kind of move away from it because there seems to be this connection that if you're spiritual and you're helping people on their spiritual journeys or helping them to heal themselves, then you shouldn't charge a lot of money. And my thought on that is that it could be because we see big pharma charging so much for healing, and so we automatically are like, we should not do that. And I did a money magic course with Saren Bertrand last year, and it was pure magic. It was incredible. One of the things that has really landed for me is that when we look around the world today, we see money that is pooled in these areas that are not supporting the kind of world that we want to build, that they're not supporting the vision that a lot of us are having for the kind of economy that we want to build, for the kind of communities that we want to support. And so what we see is, the money has pooled in these spaces that are unrooted from feminine consciousness. They're actually built into, people will call it the patriarchy, but I don't resonate with that. To me, this energy is that of the masculine, which is unrooted and therefore immature. It has not been rebirthed through those feminine roots to gain its wisdom. And so it's all based on structure, knowledge, logic, rationale, and separation. And so to me, first I'll talk about, we see people that are kind of, they'll go off and they'll create their own communities and they'll not want to deal with money. And there has been some form of abundance exchange that has happened throughout the entire existence of humans, whether that was pelts or spices or animals or gold or jewels. It's always been something. And in our modern society, it's a bunch of numbers. It's for the most part a bunch of numbers on a plastic card, or it is green cash sometimes still. And rarely, checks and banknotes, right? And it's a resource. Money is a resource, and it always has been. And as I was feeling into these layers, I was feeling into, we don't have shame of receiving and allowing air to nourish us. We don't have shame in allowing the water to nourish us, allowing the earth and her abundant fruits to nourish us, right? And these are all resources that our soul, that our body needs, that come from the natural elements. But we are in this body in a community. Excuse me, my nose, my nose is running a little bit. I have a little cold. We are in community. And so as we connect into that community, if we want to be able to share a message of rooting in, if we want to be able to have the biggest impact, then we have to be connected to and allow ourselves to be experienced by the people around us, kind of in the thick of it. And not everybody is meant to be in the thick of it. There's value in creating off-grid communities to build that kind of wisdom and knowledge again. But this is sort of taking a group and separating it still. There's still a sort of separation, like I don't want to be a part of that thing. And it's not acknowledging the underlayers that exist in humanity. And thinking of abundance and thinking of the way that we experience it in our system, the sensations that it brings to our body. You can connect this a little bit to the same idea of how crystals will have an effect on our body, or how anything has an effect on our water body, right? So water has memory, water takes, records, holds onto whatever energetic signatures it crosses, which means that our body does, all of the water content in our body does as well, and that shifts things at the cellular level for us. And this is how crystals work with us. This is how, homeopathy actually works with us. This is how we can work with plants, with plant magic. This is how we work with each other when we interact, and we can feel the essence of someone. We can feel the vibe that we get from someone because our energetic body can feel that. And it's transmitted through water. And the interesting thing is, as you look at the kinds of things that have an impact on water, the moon, the sun, the planets, all of these things have an impact on water. The environments around it, the way that you speak to or think toward water, even if you don't speak the words out loud, if you look at a plant, or if there have been lots of interesting studies done about just looking in the direction of a plant and thinking or speaking something toward it, and how that changes the structure of the water. It's still water, but it literally will physically change the structure of the water. And when you think of how our bodies do that, actually humans have the most potent impact on water, which means that humans also have the most potent impact on other humans around us, right? So we're all turning to these crystals and all these different things to heal us, and turning to the earth. And that's, it's so, so, so important to weave ourselves back into union with the earth and her elements. But let's not remove ourselves from the muck. Let's be here right in the center of it, where as we transform, our energy frequency can ripple out and touch those around us, right? So not separating, but then also when it comes to this money, financial aspect of it, what we're looking at is the ability to buy back our economies. And so this was the biggest thing that landed with me from that feminine magic course, is those of us who feel a deepening, a root, kind of anchoring that's happening. We're creating this network of roots, this kind of beautiful interconnected web around the world of people who are digging their roots in and reclaiming this feminine wisdom to integrate it with the masculine, so that we can come to a more balanced expression as humans that are both rooted into the earth and the elements and her wisdom, and also connected to the cosmos and the clarity and the um, kind of light knowledge, right? And as we do that, we're all getting this vision of a different kind of community that we would like to interact in, a different kind of economy that we would like to build. And we're receiving this, and we're feeling these things, this resonance is shifting, because we're connected to this consciousness that's bigger than we are, that is moving this through us, that is sort of weaving with us. And this is the divine nature of source creation, which is abundance, right? The abundance to have all of the resources necessary to create anything. And what resonates deeply with me is that as we continue this shift at the individual consciousness level, that ripples out into the collective, that's kind of this beautiful web that's all around the world and rippling out, we are seeing the old structures beginning to falter. We are seeing them beginning to crumble. Why? Because they don't work for those of us who have connected into this deeper rooted place. They are no longer serving us, which means that that wealth is going to be transferred. It's not going to be in these places anymore. There is going to be a huge transfer of wealth into the hands of the people who are here to build these new economies. And so, really, the most important thing that we can do right now as people who are on the fringe of building this, who are on the front lines and working on, shifting that collective consciousness and anchoring these roots in, is to allow ourselves to work with these layers where we are able to actually claim the amount of abundance that is meant to be transferred to us and through us so that we can channel it into those places that are in alignment, building this new world. Because we don't have to fight against what is crumbling in order to make change. We simply need to let it crumble and continue building, continue allowing those resources to be redirected into something else. And in the future, if we want some kind of different system of financial abundance, we most certainly could shift that. But why? Money itself is not evil, right? There's nothing wrong with our currency. There is nothing wrong with the way that we exchange money. There is something wrong with the structure that it is founded upon. There's something wrong with the structures that it is channeled into. But as we buy that economy back, we get to choose what we channel it back into. And so I think that that's where we really have so much power that is really important for us to recognize and claim. And, with my conscious sun, I'm a 1-3 manifestor generator. My conscious sun is the spirit of abundance. And my incarnation cross is that of the sleeping phoenix. And, I'm here to help others to recognize that the dreams that they have, the visions that they have for their life, they are a reliable source for them to move forward on. And so if you have these ideas of money, whether you have strong negative ideas of money, if you have here's the thing, you're meant to have a relationship with money. Money is a source of nourishment and abundance for us. It really becomes like our parent as we individuate, right? How do we pay for a roof over our head? How do we pay for food in our mouth? And so any mother father wounds that we carry, we project onto money and it becomes part of our money story. And so being able to dance with and court this relationship so that you can build the kind of relationship that you are here to build with money. Every person's relationship with money is different, and every person experiences their financial prosperity through a different pathway. And this is actually one of the gifts that I share that I have, both in exploring human design and just from my own layers, from having to work through this and cultivate this relationship myself. This is one of the things that I do is I help people to feel into what their path is, what their gifts are, what their divine purpose is, and how they are here to experience financial abundance, and really claiming that for yourself, really exploring that and digging through those layers and transforming that relationship to bring it into a healthy state. If you want to be able to make a true change in the world, you have to have the power to do so. And throughout all of history, power has always been in the hands of those who had the resources. So it's important not to try to shy away from or close out this resource, because this resource truly is one of the most powerful ways that we can actually make a change in the 3D world, right? It's one of the most important ways that we as our physical body interact with our external world. And so, and this is true, you need money if you want to build. You need money if you want to be able to transform things and build communities. And so recognizing that we're here not to separate and go off in pods and just live our life separate from this world that feels so out of alignment, and just go off and just build this thing over here. Like, yes, that's fine. Yes, that's fine. Do that. And in some ways that can be helpful, but really it's so important to make sure that you're also claiming your money abundance in the process. Because, as Saren said, that the feminine wisdom, those roots have been sold like a whore to the highest bidder. And so now all of this is being transferred back into the hands of the shamans and the magicians and the spirit weavers and the people who are seeing these visions for the future. And it's specifically being transferred into the hands of those who aren't afraid to face the shadow, who aren't afraid to dig deep into the soil, to dig those roots deep, to claim that feminine wisdom. Because a lot of what we see in the material world right now, the 3D world right now, is this sort of new age spiritual energy that is like way up. It's like reclaiming all of the star knowledge, which is incredible and beautiful. And it's so important for us to open our crown to that. But it's very unrooted. And so being able to root that down to reclaim the feminine wisdom as well, so that we've got knowledge and wisdom, we've got air and we've got earth, so that we can weave with these elements, is so, so, so important. And the universe wants to transfer wealth into the hands of those who are going to be gatekeepers and spirit keepers and what's the word, that caretakers of this new world, who are going to channel it back into the places that are going to build this new vision, right? So yeah, I also thought that it was really funny, and I'm very watery, so I kind of tend to go in little tangents. But I was going to say earlier that it's so funny, because as I ran away from the gifts of my, very logical, rational, masculine energy, I also ran away from my natural gift of numbers, and I actually totally wrote off those jobs that I actually did stay in as just, well, that's just what comes easy to me, but that's not my gift. Of course, that's part of my gifts. It's what comes easily and naturally to me. And the really funny thing is that I was always okay working with other people's numbers, working with other businesses' numbers, working with their financial. I had great time doing it. It was easy. It came naturally to me. I had a good time doing it. I loved the problem solving aspects of it. But when it came to my own money, I never wanted to look at it, because it was so full of pain, because there was just never enough. And all it would do is remind me that there wasn't enough. And so these tips and tricks where I could just buy the thing that I wanted and feel the abundance felt great to me, because I never had to look at the money, right? But my money layers required me to not only look at the money, but really actually recognize where it's been a lover to me and it's been courting me, and I have been ignoring it or just using it and not even paying attention. And it's so important to bring that respect of what this abundance is here to be channeled into, what its intention is. And even before that, it's so important to allow ourselves to be nourished, to allow ourselves to fully receive what is given to us. I would find myself receiving and then feeling like, oh, well, that's not even enough. It's spent before I even receive it. It's like I'm spending it out of thin air, spent before it's ever even fully received, and it's never fully received into the body. And it didn't matter how much it was. I could get $30,000, I could get $50,000, I could get $15,000. It wouldn't matter. And it didn't matter how long it stayed in my bank account. I would never fully receive it because I was always ahead of myself and thinking how long, how many months rent it was going to pay, how long it, what bills I could pay with it, and how long it was going to last. It never fully got received to fully create that nourishment and abundance. And instead of looking at it that way, being able to fully, deeply receive every penny, even the 86 cents of dividends that, get dropped into my, low checking account, or the small little reverse that happens because of cash back, or, any little thing like a dime that I find on the ground, right? All of these are like dew on the petals of the lush forest, right? So allowing all of this to be nourishing and allowing yourself to have permission to receive the financial abundance is so important. Let me see. Was there anything else? I always feel like I just kind of go off on like little tangents with these things. So yeah, I think the thing that's been, most powerful, most potent for me, my gifts are here to work with others with abundance and intimacy layers, and our abundance and our connections, our intimacy, they live in the sacral chakra. And they're very closely connected. So if you look at your relationship with money, and then you look at your relationship with sexuality, you will find, even maybe on the surface, some things that even the conscious mind can pick up on as how these things are similar. Or if you take that intimacy step, one step deeper to the root of our intimacy connections, and you think about how you feel about money, and then you think about how your needs were met as a child, even the conscious mind might be able to pick up on some of those threads. But I can tell you from my own work that when I go in and I am processing a layer around how I feel about the money around me or the availability of it, every single time it takes me back into my childhood and how worthy I was, or whether or not I had what I needed of love and attention, particularly from my father, whether or not the women in my life were resourced to take care of their children. There are so many things that we carry forward, and it is completely intertangled. We have to remember that the emotional realm is a feminine realm where everything is interconnected. And this is my absolute gift and passion, is to explore all of that interconnectedness and to let the body show us where it's interconnected. And so helping others to cultivate that skill of bringing their mind, their masculine energy, down into their body so that their body can take them on the journey of what their roots are, because it's not going to be the same as mine. And the mind could never guess, right? The mind cannot fathom these connections until they're made. And then it's like, oh, holy shit, I never would have known. And it's, I mean, still constantly, constantly, constantly. I'll hold a layer for something and then I'll be like, oh my God, I had no idea it was connected to that. We just don't know. We just don't realize it. And it's not like we have to try to fix everything. We're not here to try to fix everything. It's not like we're here to try to be perfect. It's not like we're here to try to heal every single layer so that we can be healed and whole. It's actually about just allowing the places that you feel anxious, the places that you feel out of alignment, to guide you to those things that are holding you back from your truth, so that you can step more fully into who you already are, so that you can see and experience at an internal level who you already are. I can't tell you how often when I've explored the human design charts just for my friends around me, as I was just exploring this myself and just exploring it with them for fun, I can't tell you how often what we discover is so apparent. It's so evident, but they didn't realize it. The thing is that it's apparent to everybody else around them. It's felt by everyone around them, but they don't see it. They don't feel it because they are disconnected from that experience. Their mind has not become aware of this thing. And so, this is actually one of the reasons why I'm thinking about creating an icebreaker opportunity to work with me just by exploring your human design chart, because it's such a beautiful way to start to bring the mind on board to this sort of quantum realm of the feminine, to really start to get an idea of the structure of the gifts that are inside. And it's no different than when you're in relationship with someone. If you have not ever seen or experienced a feeling of being worthy, or being, experiencing healthy love, or understanding, seeing, having a model of what that looks like, you're not going to be able to feel it in your partner. It doesn't matter what they're bringing to the relationship. You won't be conscious of it. You will think that it's not there until you actually can explore that thing and get a sense for what it actually feels like in your body. Once your mind understands what it's feeling for, it's the mind actually that makes what we're feeling a conscious experience. We can have things happen to our body that we are completely disconnected from, and because there's no conscious awareness of it, we don't think that anything happened, which is why so many people are completely unaware of their incomplete trauma cycles from childhood. Because as long as we're dissociated from it, things might come out sideways and we might have these repeating patterns. There are always things that are pointing us toward it, but the mind has no idea until we start to bring the mind into the body, right? So we look around us and we feel like we don't have abundance. We feel like there's never enough. But truthfully, when I followed these layers back, I felt like I was starving for attention, from love, from healthy attention from my father. Nothing that I ever did was enough because he wasn't capable of showing up in those ways. And he never would have been. It just, nothing can change that, right? But the other truth is that there was always abundance and love available for me through the true parents of our soul and our body, which we're meant to be rooted back into. But in our modern society, in ancient societies and in tribal societies, we were rooted back into those things as our sources of love and nourishment and abundance. But in our civilized modern societies, we don't do this. We expect it all to come from our parents. And when they are fallible humans working through their own coping mechanisms and unprocessed trauma, who could never possibly meet all of our needs as one human being, what do we experience? That thing doesn't exist, because as far as we know in our awareness, it never has. But when we can go back in and we can root ourselves into the primordial templating of the original mother and the original father, right? The stars and the earth, then we can feel that that abundance, that that creative nature has always been there. It's never left our side. To me, it felt like there was just this concrete like pathway built above all of the abundance that I was sitting on. And I felt like I was starving because I wasn't aware of what was beneath me. I was separated from it. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't there. And once you can root into it and you can feel it, then you can start to dance at an even more deeper level with those layers. And truthfully, as I have danced with and felt money courting me and recognizing that abundance has always been there, always witnessing what I've been going through. And I always have had a sense that there was something bigger that was taking care of me. I've always had a sense that things were just going to be okay. They were going to work themselves out. And they always have, just barely, right? And it's like, this is the true unconditional love that we yearn for in relationship. This is that love, that abundance that is always courting us, that will love you and be there for you no matter how long you ignore it, no matter what you do, no matter what thoughts or beliefs you have about it. As soon as you turn around, it's there. It's there. It's always there, just waiting for you to bring your awareness to it, just waiting for you to connect to it, right? Humans can have unconditional love, but their presence is not unconditional, right? But the universe's presence is unconditional. And so, yeah, for me, I can feel really strongly this energy of courting, of actual relationship. And there have been layers that I've connected to in my own money journey where I could feel that it was courting me, but it's almost like I didn't, when I didn't want to look at it, and it's like it was out there on the dance floor. And it was like it was this handsome man that was out there just dancing amazing with all of these incredible women. And I could see that other people had this, but I was like way too shy. And I didn't want to even look. And it's like he would kind of look at me and I would kind of look away, right? It's like money would come to me, but I wouldn't want to look at it. I couldn't receive it fully, right? Like I see all these people out here doing amazing things with it. And sure, maybe I'll dance with it, but I'm not really going to connect, or I'll dance near it, but I'm not really going to connect with it, right? Because I was too shy and I was really afraid. When I felt into the feeling, I was very afraid. And as soon as I processed those layers and I reunited with money, it started back like, it had taken me back to childhood layers, and money had connected with me as a child and was inviting me out to play. And so it was like this beautiful, for me, money always shows up as a green man, the green man. And so it'll be different for each person. But, and obviously for men, it probably won't be a masculine energy. It's probably more of a feminine energy for men, I would assume. And there are feminine aspects that I've danced with money as well. There are both masculine and feminine aspects that are connected from our childhood nourishment in that. But for me, the overall archetype is the green man. And, it was like this green man, like Tomlin almost from like the Narnia series that was like coaxing my inner child out to play. And then it came to me like as a woman, not who I am today at first, but just me as a woman reconnecting with this masculine aspect of money. And it was the most exquisitely painful reuniting that I've ever experienced in my life. It was so incredibly cathartic, but there was just this deep yearning and this like heartbreak of having been separated for so long, and this like conversation of telepathic conversation of awareness that moved through of how I had been ignoring him, how he hadn't been seen this whole time, and just this heartbreaking realization that this aspect that I so deeply yearned for, I had been ignoring. And and just unable to see, but he was there the whole time, just patiently waiting for me, patiently just courting me the whole time. And yeah, and then, I moved into like where I am today, who I am today, and it was just this awareness that he is here to support me, to lift me up, to help me to shine my light and my gifts in the world, and to, help me buy back this feminine wisdom to channel and support, all of these other areas, all of these other, people who are doing the same. And there's some sound out in the hallway. Um, and also that he's here to support me and nourish my children, to make sure that I have enough financial abundance, more than enough for me and my children, to make sure that I am well resourced in order to take care of my children. And these are huge, huge, huge aspects to dance with. These are huge things to reclaim, right? And I've moved through layers of where I hadn't allowed myself to receive, to be nourished by money as a resource, where I was afraid of the consequences if I focused on my dreams as a source of abundance, which for me personally, it's only through my dreams that that resource specifically flows to me in an independent way. Osra Bertrand, one of my beautiful mentors, that I'm currently doing a diploma with, talks about the mother trees, and he talks about how we begin, all of us, man or woman, we begin as these sort of like infant trees that are nourished by the mother trees in the forest. You know how like forest mother trees will actually um, channel their nourishment. They will save extra nourishment and they will channel it to the saplings around them. And we all begin in that space, but at some point it becomes time for us to stand as mother trees to actually channel that those resources back into the community. And we see that happening a lot in modern society, where people will grow up and become financially independent, but that source of money is deeply unrooted. And the channeling of that money is deeply unrooted as well. And so as we continue to awaken to that darkness and grow those roots deepen and really anchor ourselves into that feminine consciousness, we begin to integrate the two. And so we can actually then become a mother tree where we're able to channel these resources into the community in ways that are powerful, in ways that are in alignment and supported by the universe and by the essence and spirit of creation itself. And as we do this, some have called it a feminized banking system. It feels to me more like just a banking system that is firmly rooted both in healthy masculine and feminine principles. There's a beautiful structure to it. There's beautiful, because without channeling, without structure, without this masculine direction, nothing happens, but it must be rooted in the feminine. It has to have that feminine aspect integrated in order to really build the communities that we want. So, yeah, I think that's about all I had to say on this topic right now. Um, yeah, so let me know how this lands for you. Let me know what you have experienced around this, or if anything resonates around this. And I'll look forward to connecting with you next time.